Once upon a tabletop, some adventurers gather to have a lot of heart-to-heart conversations. Hey everyone, I'm Jonathan Rutledge, and this is episode 14 of Colonial Caerdia, Lark's Landing, a 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons campaign being played at a local hobby shop called the Devil's Bench. When last we left our heroes, Acta, the tiefling warlock, and Kordak, the half-orc fighter, had just killed their hobgoblin prisoner. The rest of the party had gone off to investigate a stone loop for the duration of the interrogation. Gilligan, the human mystic, tries to repair the runes on the stone loop. After expending a large portion of his energy, he determines that it would take months to accomplish this task. However, while contemplating the problem, he believes he's discovered a new way to drag answers out of their prisoner. He tells the others, and Stor, the goblin monk, agrees to lead him back to camp. Shen, the dwarven ranger, and Balazar, the dragonborn cleric, decide to stay where they are. They understand the importance of what's going on back at camp, but they want nothing to do with it. Without Shen's experience in forested areas, it takes Stor and Gilligan 4 hours to get back to camp. There they find that the hobgoblin is already dead and buried. Kordak and Acta have been waiting for everyone else to get back. Shend and Balazar finally arrive late in the evening. Before going to sleep for the night, Kordak starts an important conversation. He tells the rest of the party that he thinks they've gotten in over their heads. He used to be in the military, but not for that long, and he wasn't trained for anything like this. He feels like there's way too much responsibility on his shoulders, what with their connection to the settlement. And after torturing the hobgoblin, he feels like he's being pushed more towards his aggressive side, something he's been trying to get away from for his whole life. Shend is quick to agree with him, saying how terrifying it was to see the military efficiency of the hobgoblins. The conversation turns to what they should do next. They consider going back to Grubfrub the bugbear to tell him what little they have learned. However, they're pretty sure he won't be happy with what little information they have. He might try to kill them. They could always try to kill him to break up the goblin tribe, but they don't know how that will turn out for them. They could always lie to him and have him lead his tribe to their deaths. But they're pretty sure Grubfrub will want them to attack the Hobgoblin City alongside him. They could actually finish the scouting mission. It would be helpful for the settlement to know about the potential threat of the Hobgoblins as well. However, right now, if anything happens to them, no one at the settlement will know about the Goblin tribe or the Hobgoblins. After debating into the night, they take a vote and decide it's time to go home. The settlement needs to know what's going on, and Grubfrub will probably assume they were killed by the Hobgoblins. At last, they go to sleep. On the second watch of the night, Stor isn't paying quite as much attention as he needed to be. He hears a sound and spins around to see 2 owlbears, one attacking Kordak and the other one attacking Balazar. His 2 friends wake up with cries of pain that awake the rest of the group as well. They launch into a ferocious battle, wearing down the owlbears. Stor splits the attention of one of them between himself and Kordak. However, the other monster focuses all its attention on Balazar. It soon has the cleric injured and unconscious. Shen, still dozy from being wakened from sleep, can't seem to get any of his arrows to hit their mark. He's just carefully aiming an arrow at the owlbear attacking Balazar when Stor leaps into action. The goblin monk kills the owlbear he's been fighting, then prances across the field to punch and kick the other one to death. As he's landing the killing blow, he hears an enraged shout from Shend, telling him not to steal his kill. However, it's too late. Frustrated, enraged, and more than a little dozy, Shen draws out his short sword and lashes out at Stor. He doesn't mean any real harm, but he doesn't take into account the wounds Stor received from the owlbear. The goblin crumples to the ground. The rest of the party leap into action. Acta casts a spell, locking Shen in place, unable to move. The freshly revived Balazar rushes to Stor's side, pouring magic into him to keep him alive. Kordak interposes himself between Shend and Stor, moving the dwarven ranger away. They all demand to know what's going on. Shend launches into an enraged speech about how Stor stole his kill. He then goes on to say many nasty things, including telling Stor he's greedy and just as bad as the rest of the goblins. Eventually, everyone calms down and reason is restored. They agree that it's late at night and they should all get back to sleep because they need their rest. With Balazar so injured, Shend takes a second watch. It isn't a particularly good idea, but no one is going to argue with him right now. However, in the morning they decide to let Shen sleep in so he won't be too exhausted. Stor goes off alone to hunt, hoping to burn off some of his pent-up emotions. He only finds small game though, so he comes back empty-handed. There's a tension in the group that has never been there before. Gilligan tries to break that tension with some owlbear bacon. He doesn't really succeed. They head off on the journey home with a chilly atmosphere. On the second day out, they come across a sinkhole, but don't think it's worth investigating. On the third day, Shend notices that above the jungle canopy, there are rainbow clouds in the sky. They draw some attention, but no one can figure out why they exist. So Acta makes up a story about how they produce rainbow lightning. She knows all about them, or at least she convinces the others that she does. They continue on their way and arrive at the settlement around noon on the 4th day. Kordak pulls Shend aside, asking him to go for a walk and to talk. Acta wants to go too, but Gilligan intervenes, asking her to walk with him to the temple. Balazar heads off to pray at his shrine to Oppressive, and Storr heads over to talk to Hargrom. The leader of the militia updates Storr as to what's been going on. Not much has been happening outside of dealing with the food shortage problem. Naldor had managed to get rid of the rats in his shop and had turned his attention to the main food storage. Unfortunately, someone else had decided to help as well. No one knew who it was, but they had summoned a couple of imps to get rid of the rats. It had worked, but then the imps had gone wild and burned down the food storage. Now Naldor was completely in charge of the food supply. Storr tells Hargrom that the group has news too and asks for a council meeting. Hargrom says he'll arrange it for that evening. Storr then also heads over to pray at the shrine to Oppressive. On their walk, Kordak has a deep conversation with Shend. Shend expresses his frustration at having his skills stolen and how he's used to working alone, not with a group. Kordak slowly talks him around to seeing another perspective. Was the matter of who got the killing blow really more important than saving Balazar's life? With a deeper understanding of the situation, Shend heads off to find Storr, guessing he will either be at home or at the shrine to Oppressive. On their walk to the temple, Gilligan and Acta have trouble finding anything to talk about. At last, Gilligan awkwardly asks where she gets her power from. She simply says that she has a patron and won't say any more about it. At the temple, they part ways, Acta going home and Gilligan going in to check on Triana. She's very excited to see him and tell him that the temple's complete except for a few benches that are still being made. Gilligan stays there for a while, then goes off to check with Hargrom. After hearing about the imps, he rushes over to see Naldor. He questions the shopkeeper, suspecting he has an involvement in this. However, all he finds out is that no one even saw who summoned the imps. Naldor isn't even particularly happy about being in charge of all the food. Gilligan heads back home. Shen finds Storr and Balazar at the shrine to Oppressive. He asks Balazar to give them a moment alone. The cleric nods. Upon arriving at the shrine, he noticed that someone had been maintaining the area around it. He decides to head off to find out who's responsible. His first check-in is with Hedon, who he knows has been at the shrine before and who works with Marara fishing. At the shrine, Shend draws his swords and drives them into the ground. He apologizes to Storr, explaining where he was coming from and the new perspective Kordak helped him find. He also compliments Storr on his ability to punch an owlbear to death. Storr accepts the apology. Then they hear Balazar's magically enhanced shouting from out on the beach. They rush out to find him, shouting out at the ocean. Out in the distance, they can see Marara's house raft out fishing. They ask what he's doing, and he explains that he wants to know if Hedon, who is on the raft, is responsible for taking care of the shrine. Shend and Storr decide to race out. Storr clicks the heels of his boots of water walking together and runs over. Shend dives in and swims. Storr wins by a long shot. He determines that Hedon, as well as a few others, have been maintaining the shrine. He reports this back to Balazar, who magically shouts thank you across the water. Shend and Storr then return to the raft and help with the fishing. Shend diving down to catch fish, and Storr standing on the surface spearfishing. Kordak checks in with Hargrom and reports everything they've encountered. That evening, the report is also delivered to the rest of the council. There's a lot of concern about the nearby hostile creatures, including the possibility of the Soggy Alliance. In the end, the council decides that they need time to think on it before they discuss the matters further. The adventurers head off, most of them going home. Acta, however, is a tiefling with a mission. She heads off for Naldor's shop, expecting it to be closed up for the night. Storr sees her and follows. Upon arriving, Acta sees Naldor heading in, just coming back from the council meeting himself. She's a little disappointed when she discovers that he lives in the shop, but isn't to be dissuaded. She's drawn a delightful scribble of Naldor labeled Racist Guy that she intends to nail to the door. However, as quietly as she tries to hammer, she's noticed. Not by Naldor, but by a passing tiefling. He's a council member named Angro, and he grabs her by her horn and drags her to the side. He promptly tells her off for harassing Naldor. He says that tieflings have a bad enough name without her proving people right. He tells her that if she needs something to do with her time, he can always find work for her. She argues that she's just having fun and enjoying life. Naldor hates tieflings anyways, and he's never going to change. At this point, Storr comes out of the shadows and tells her that no one is born evil. He then tells her too about how Naldor lost his family to the Samvidian Empire, an army led by tieflings. Acta sulks off and finds a place by the wall to sleep. Storr follows and tries to have a conversation with her. She's not very responsive, but does say that Shend knows about some of her troubles. Storr heads home for the night, telling Shend that he wants to speak with him about Acta in the morning. They all go to sleep. In the morning, Shend and Storr have a quick talk about what they know about Acta. Shend admits to getting the ogre's tooth for Acta. He also says that she found him asleep on his watch and didn't tell anyone about it, so he felt he owed her, but that had been the night they saw the mysterious footprints in their camp. He also shares that he's been able to sense that Fluffy, the pseudo-dragon familiar, is a fiend. However, he's convinced that Acta isn't evil, and that's where this week's session came to an end. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below letting me know what you think. If you want to support this channel, there's a link for that down in the description, as well as a link to my website where you can buy the chainmail that I make. There won't be a video coming out next week because the store is closed for Valentine's Day, but we're back on for the week after that, so come back then to find out what happens next once upon a tabletop.